Hey guys, welcome to the Perception channel. My name is Jeremy Lasky. I'm co-owner and co-founder of Perception. We have an incredibly special episode for you guys this week. It's a conversation with Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios. This is a huge honor for me and a long time coming, trying to get this interview, and I'm thrilled to finally bring it to you guys. We've been collaborating with Marvel Studios for about 8 years. We began on Iron Man 2 and have worked on nearly every Marvel Studios film since then. The entire culture at Perception is built on Marvel memorabilia, from toys to comic books to posters. Even our computers are each named after a different Marvel character from the Marvel Universe. So again, thrilled to have this conversation. So without further ado, my interview with Kevin Feige.
Jeremy.
Yes. Hey, Kevin.
How are you, man?
Great. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
How have you been?
I've been busy, but very good. I know you've been busy, but very good.
Yeah, well, we've been having an incredible time collaborating with you and your team for the last few years, and most recently, as you know, we're doing some stuff on Homecoming, which is super exciting.
Yeah, which looks really cool and was super impressive, and our director sort of couldn't believe. Jeremy Latcham talked you up. He talked you up in a big way, and it's like, okay, John Watts is like, all right, let's see. And he's like, holy shit.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I really appreciate it. Thought I'd just jump right in and get started with these questions. Sounds good?
Awesome. Yes.
All right. Cool. So how did you get started? What was your first job, and how did you get from there to where you are now?
I started as an intern on the lowest rung you can possibly start in Hollywood. Get your foot in the door and just start doing anything anybody asks you to do. I was a film student at USC, and there were postings for internships, and a lot of my friends at that time were getting internships at lots of places, and a lot of places I hadn't heard of, which is always cool. But I really thought, boy, if I'm going to go work for free and really spend a lot of time when I'm not in class working for somebody, wouldn't it be great to do it for somebody that I knew or admired? And I got very lucky, because when I went into the intern board, or whatever they call it, the job posting board in the old, now demolished George Lucas building on the USC campus, there was a flyer for Donner Schuler Donner Productions, which was Richard Donner, the director, of course, of Superman, which I still think is one of the greatest comic book films ever made, and
I agree.
I'm obsessed with. And Lethal Weapon, and Goonies, and Scrooge, and The Omen, and I just sort of couldn't believe it. So I put a resume together and sent it in, and was very lucky and got the job. And that was the one and only resume I've ever filled out in my whole life.
Wow.
For that internship. And I did all sorts of things there. I was filing and making copies, and back in those days sending faxes, and doing anything anybody needed me to do. I liked it very much that over the summer I stayed, and I was a receptionist one summer, answering phones and letting people in for meetings, and generally doing anything anybody asked me to do. And then I got very lucky. Before I even graduated from film school, they hired me as a PA, so I was part-time there, a production assistant. And when I graduated, I became Lauren Schuler Donner's assistant, which was super exciting. Her assistants had one of her assistants, just before me, had just been promoted to associate producer on a movie and was working on a film on location, which I thought sounded like the greatest thing ever. And boy, if I could work hard and get to that level, I'd be really excited. And that's what it was. And it was everything from heating up soup and getting lunch to washing cars and walking dogs, and in between that, reading scripts and doing notes on scripts. And the one that I was most interested in, that I did notes on and sent them in, and because Lauren is very gracious and a very good mentor, she would read them and sort of liked what they had to say and started inviting me into meetings with the newly hired filmmaker on the project, is what became the first X-Men film.
Awesome.
That's how I started there.
So when you were growing up, what did you love more, comics or movies, or which did you fall in love with first?
Movies by far. I always liked comics, but I always say I was always I would only occasionally go to the comic shop on Wednesday. I would always go to the movies on Friday. I was obsessed with movies.
What were some of your favorites?
Well, of course. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so the Star Wars movies, the Star Trek movies. I might be the only person on Earth who legitimately loves Star Wars and Star Trek equally. I couldn't tell you which one I love more. I love them both.
I think we're exactly the same age, so we grew up in the same exact time. Back to the Future, all the Star Wars movies.
You Back to the Future, the most perfect movie. Back to the Future 2, the most anticipated movie. I read every behind-the-scenes article of the way they made both those movies back to back. Which of course is what we're doing now with the Avengers movie, next to Avengers movies, and I swear we're doing that in part because I remember reading those stories of Zemeckis on Back to the Future 2 and 3 at the same time. Saw Back to the Future 2 7 times in a theater. Would explain it. All my friends who would say it was too confusing, I'd go, no, it's not. And I would start drawing Doc Brown's chart that he did on paper. Super excited for Willow when Willow was coming out. And I thought, not great. Not great. The Indiana Jones movies. I mean, you know, those are the crowd pleasing films that inspired me and that ignited my imagination to want to do this.
Awesome. So moving ahead to the new Marvel Studios logo and sequence that we got to collaborate with you on, what was the motivation to create that, and what story did you want it to tell?
Well, you know, the very first Marvel logo that was in front of a film was on the very first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. Marvel was just starting to come into its own in film and had enough clout to get it into the contract with Sony that they get their own logo. And the logo that was developed for that I thought was great, and I think it's iconic now, that flip logo that people have saw for years on those movies. As we became our own studio, starting with Iron Man 1, I thought, well, we need to identify this film as being from Marvel Studios. So we started tweaking it a little bit. As we kept making films through Marvel Studios, we would make small tweaks here and there to it, which at the time I thought were really big differences. Look, we changed this or we moved this around. Audiences couldn't really tell, didn't really notice.
Subtle.
And the more Marvel Studios movies that we would make, the more Marvel movies other studios would make, and I felt we really needed to differentiate a film that was based on a Marvel comic versus a film that was produced by Marvel Studios itself, which is when we contacted you to say, let's do something that celebrates the cinematic universe up to this point and includes the characters and the clips and the actors and the cast from those movies within the logo itself, and really have it be a celebration of all the films that have come before, and do it in a way that without doubt could only be done in front of a pure Marvel Studios production.
Awesome. With so many people collaborating on all of your productions, what makes Marvel Studios' process so successful?
Well, you know, we've been doing it now for 10 years. We're coming up on a celebration of our first 10 years as a studio. We're going to be tracking that 10-year celebration to the release of Iron Man 1. So it'll be next year in 18. The truth is, we started working a few years before that as a studio. As we got the financing, we started developing the films. So it really now has been 10 years. And most of us, as you know, at the studio here have been together 10 years or more. So it really comes down to trust and to a shared vision, which does not mean, as you know from sitting in reviews with all of us, being in agreement all the time. The end goal, the desire for the best product at the end of the day is shared across all of us. But we don't always agree. And there can be, you know, contentious moments in reviews looking at
spirited discussions.
That's the dumbest thing ever. No, that's the coolest thing ever. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, and really, I cherish that. Because I think it's that kind of creative friction that leads to the best product.
But with all that, you guys are still able to make decisions so quickly, and it's always so impressive to us how you're able to do that with so many different incredible ideas and opinions being brainstormed about.
Well, I think that's a testament to you too. That when it's hard to argue about something when you're presented with something that just works.
Right.
We share, intellectually. I think we all have different taste levels here at Marvel Studios, but in our guts, when we see something that's just plain cool and just works, we recognize it, and that's when we know that okay, that's it. No reason to keep
that makes the
tweaking.
decision.
That's done. Yep.
You guys get some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Why do you think Marvel Studios is so successful at attracting such impressive talent?
Well, I think we've been very lucky. I think going back even before we were our own studio, you look at X-Men 1 that I was talking about with Bryan Singer coming off of The Usual Suspects, which was very smart of Lauren and 20th Century Fox to hire him, and it was the filmmaker there that attracted Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. So and go back to Richard Donner's Superman with Gene Hackman and with Marlon Brando. There is a tradition of great actors stepping into roles like this. I think back in the day there was a lot of it was either a particular filmmaker, director that would be the reason a cast member would join a production. I think you go back famously to Marlon Brando on Superman, and there was a lot of money involved, which of course there still is today in many cases, but that lures somebody in. But I think now we've gotten to a point which I take very seriously, that people just want to be in the sandbox. People want to play in our sandbox because they see their friends doing it and like the end result. So when we get Cate Blanchett willing to appear in the third Thor movie, it's unbelievably exciting to us.
Yeah.
And we take it very seriously because she knows that she's going to hang on wires and wear a strange-looking motion capture suit and have dialogue with characters that we will only put in, later in the post-production process. And by the way, when you have somebody like Kate, you don't need any of the other effects. You can just watch the raw daily. It's amazing.
I can't wait.
Then I take it very seriously, and there's a trust level there that they expect us to add all that stuff that's not there in a great fashion and make their performance worthy, have everything that surrounds it worthy of the performance they've given us. So it's very flattering that people are knocking on the door and want to be in the universe. But once they join, we take it very seriously and make sure that they come across as cool and surprising and unexpected as possible.
I love the recent featurette on the Doctor Strange extras on the science of the MCU. It's called Through the Keyhole, which is a topic really close to home for us at Perception. Can you talk a little about the importance of grounding all your films with tech and science that audiences can connect with? And how do you know when you're going too far ahead?
Well, I think that's something we've always responded to in the best fantasy films or the best science fiction films or the best of our comics. There's always take the kernel of something that exists in physics or in astrophysics or now in quantum physics or quantum mechanics. What's so amazing about the time we live in is there's so many unbelievable theories going on that sound like something out of a science fiction book. The multiverse itself, for instance, is something that is being used in all sorts of scientific theories, and none of us are PhDs around here. We just know cool ideas when we hear them, and ideas that oddly tap into some of the conceits of our characters, the multiverse in the case of Doctor Strange, and we run with it. And there's nothing better than having sort of a kernel of an idea of what a world could be like, and sitting down with and there's an amazing thing called the Scientific Science and Entertainment Exchange, which I'm sure you know, and they are unbelievably accomplished scientists who want to offer their services to make sure that the science in movies makes a little bit of sense. Now, that could go both ways. You could have a scientist come in and go, you can't breathe in outer space, or there's no sound in space, or the multiverse is, there's not a lot of proof for that. That's just a theory now. I don't think somebody could create a portal to walk through it, in which case the meeting would end quickly and would be no fun. But what's great is most of the scientists that we interact with understand that there are creative liberties needed, but they guide us so those liberties can always maintain even a little thread of reality to it. And I do think that makes a difference between something being pure fantasy and something seeming like it is somewhat scientifically possible. And for us, things are just all the more exciting when they could maybe actually happen in real life.
Absolutely. And, having worked on a number of your films and specifically the interfaces and the tech, we're always amazed by the kind of the unspoken hierarchy of tech coolness in the Marvel universe where, Tony Stark is top of the food chain and everybody's tech has to be a notch or two below his. And, he's like the one that everybody else's phones and devices are compared to. And, now we're working a little bit with Wakanda technology, and that's a kind of different level. And it's interesting how the mythology of the characters extends into their tech, and that is a whole other dimension of who that character is just by the technology that they possess or that they've created.
Well, and that's where you're so helpful, is showing all sorts of different versions of what a sequence could be like, or what the science behind a sequence, not just the holograms and how to differentiate holograms, yes, between Wakandan tech and Stark tech, but also with the some of the conceits, I think some of which would be spoilers if we talked about them right now,
sure.
help guide us into future sequences is a great help.
We've already made over a dozen films. I think you guys are up to 15 that are forever.
15, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be forever cemented in cinema history. What do you want the legacy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to be?
It's a loaded question. To me, it's just about, I think, success in cinema, the now 120, whatever it is, 130-year history of cinema is the test of time. I think the best films hold up over time, and I have no idea if any of our films will, or some of them, or all of them. But to me, that's the test. Can you continue to inspire future generations the way we've been inspired by films that have come before us? And to me, that would be the ultimate legacy. And having been able to be a part of something that had never been done before, shared universe. And maybe we'll see much more of that, or maybe it'll come and go, and we'll still be doing it. I don't know, but I like being a part of something that hadn't been done before, certainly on this scale.
Absolutely,
and continuing to inspire the next generations of kids that want to go to their administration building and get an internship and
yeah,
that's where it all, for me, almost now 25 years in LA, 20 years in the business, if you count picking up lunches as being in the business, which I do.
Sure.
It's nice to think that their kids being inspired and wanting to come make the move and tell their own stories and reinvent cinema another time.
Awesome. So last question, Kevin. Recently read an interview with Hugh Jackman, and he mentioned the only way he'd ever come back as Wolverine would be if he could be in an Avengers film. So is that the grand plan, to get all the Marvel characters back at some point under one umbrella?
Well, I think Hugh had an amazing final bow in Logan this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he should go anywhere beyond that, because it was what an amazing 10 movies in, amazing way to end. It was just great. But yes, of course. I mean, my goal is to replicate the experience that comic book fans have reading the books up on the screen, and we've been able to accomplish that beyond my wildest dreams over the last 10 years. Certainly, including Spidey in Civil War and the upcoming Infinity War, was yet another dream that I didn't even dare to talk about publicly, because I thought the odds of it were very slim. So
sure.
No plans beyond that right now for any of the few remaining characters that aren't already in the MCU. But I always say never say never. Who knows what can happen in the future?
Awesome. Lastly, any exclusive scoops on Infinity War that you could drop?
Nope, and neither can you, because you already have scoops. You can't talk about them.
Had to ask, right?
All right, thanks, man. Thanks.
Thank you so much,
Kim.
I really
appreciate
it.
Jeremy.
Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.